Okay, here we are back again talking about the history of the 700, the 4L60 and the 4L60E, 4L65 and the 4L70. This here is the Lonesome Dove right here. This is what is called the 4L60 tranny. I'm going to tear this down and kind of explain to you why it's kind of the Lonesome Dove. They only made this one just a few years and they got away from it really quick. It's kind of odd. It still has its governor that controls your up shifts and down shifts. Right here, got the governor there. The little valve moves up and down. You want to check that every time you rebuild them, put them back together. Now this one here does have a electronic speedometer. Some of them are gear drive, but when they went to the 4L60E, or excuse me, the 4L60 training, they went to a sensor that controls the speedometer. There's a reluctor right here that counts the speed of the shaft to tell the speedometer how fast you're going. Also, they have a seal right in here that when you slide your drive shaft in, it seals the fluid from coming down these splines and coming out a little vent hole in the back. I don't have a yoke right in front of me, but that is what that's for right there. Servo here is called your 2/4 servo. It brings on your 2/4 band. You've heard of Corvette servo, I'm sure. Stuff like that. This is what this is right here. Fluid goes in this hole right here, comes out this hole. Behind this piston applies your overdrive band. And then fluid comes through here and then applies your second gear. All 4L60s had the big shaft right here. With some of the early 700s had a small shaft. Show you some features on this one. The 700 had kind of a harsh engagement into drive, so they tried to correct that with this unit here. And that's really about it. They didn't do a whole lot of changes to it other than that. And don't look too bad for a core. I'm building this up for a friend of mine named Brody. We're going to put all the good stuff in it. This is your lock-up solenoid here that controls the converter clutch and the torque converter. Now what they did here to soften the forward engagement up when you put it into gear, they added an accumulator assembly right here on the valve body part. And they also redid the forward clutch too, I'll show you. I guess on the 700s, they had a lot of complaints of harsh engagements. But this is your TV cable here. This cable hooks right up here, goes up to your carburetor, and it pulls on it like this, and this pushes in this valve right here to give it TV line pressure. That way your shifts are firmer or softer when you give it gas, more firmer, like that. Now this also had a temperature sensor in it for lockup, so the transmission had to reach a certain temperature before the converter clutch would lock up in the torque converter. This is the sensor right here. It's tied into the lockup ground circuit wire. Now here is your 1-2 accumulator I talked to y'all about before, but how they control shift feel with these springs and stuff behind these pistons. Out there. Your second gear band comes on, fluid goes behind this hole, pushes on this, like this, and softens the shift. Just like that. We changed that up a bunch when we rebuilt it. This is called your lower valve body, right here. If I get this off without that. Kind of wanted to show you some things here if you can see it. The only problem they had with this tranny was right here beside this check ball right here. You really can't see it. To get something to point it out. Kind of turn it sideways a little bit. See how these check balls have holes beside them? This one here does not. This is your third gear clutch feed ball. Now, anytime we rebuild these back, we actually put a hole right here to give it a little bit more fluid to apply that clutch. It was one of the mistakes that they physically did when they built this tranny. So, also let me show you something here too. See how we have a trough here and we have a square and there's no hole here? But some of these trannies have a round hole and a round hole. If it's a round hole and a round hole, you have to put a check ball in this trough right here. Right here. If it's a square hole and a no hole, you do not put a check ball in this trough when you put this tranny back together. Now this ball right here is your fourth gear feed ball. So you want to make sure you put this ball back. You can enlarge this hole a little bit right here to make your fourth gear firmer. But you definitely want to put a hole right here. Probably about a 45 thousandths to 50 thousandths hole. Works really good, or a little bit larger if you want to too. This is that accumulator that they added to the forward clutch circuit right here. So when you put it in drive, physically into drive, there's a piston and a spring in here, just like what I was showing you in this system right here, but it's in here, and that's how they control the shift feel when they put it in drive. Okay. Now here's another one. This is your 3/4 accumulator piston to soften the shift. What we do is we go back here and block this circuit plumb off to give the fourth gear shift a lot better shift. We do it in all race cars and even in your daily driver, your grandma's car, we do it in that one too. There's so much to go over on these transmissions that I kind of missed a lot of stuff, but it's pretty cool. This is your parking assembly right here. When your drive shaft turns, it goes into park. I don't know if you can see it very good. Like that. Now here's some of these check balls I was talking about too. You get this check ball out of here. That's okay. You see there's a trough right here and there's a check ball in it. There's a trough here, no check ball. And if you take this right here and you turn it over, see right here it's got a square hole again. So that's for this one right here. Where we turn it over, here's your square hole for the one that was in the valve body. But if you look down here, you have one too. But if you flip it over and look, it's got two round holes. So you have to put a ball back here. Now these two balls right here, if you left them out, it wouldn't matter. The tranny would shift a lot firmer. That's these circuits right here. You know, when you get a shift kit in or something like that, you go into install this tranny, they're going to ask you to enlarge these holes right here. So to make it shift anyway. So if you left them out accidentally, it's just going to shift a little firmer. It wouldn't let it actually go down. So that parking assembly off. When we tear down trannies and stuff for customers and stuff, what we do is we kind of leave their parts laying around. That way when they come in, I kind of show them what they got. Same way with this transfer case I done this morning, I showed a video earlier on. I keep their parts, that way they can come and look at them. Gives them an idea of what's going on inside their vehicle. We stay so busy on building these trannies that it's hard to get some of these things apart. This tranny, to me, I think it's probably been built once before, and sometimes when they don't get these posts lined up just right, it's hard to get them out. But when we build these things, we put a band around here that keeps these two pieces lined up real good. That way, when you put it together, it slides in really nice. Now this is GM's kind of fix for the front seal blowout on the 700s and stuff. They put a retainer that goes on here to hold the front seal in, like that. They did drill the relief hole here in the pump to help it some too. A lot better bushing style that we put in there. We'll look at this pump and see if it's rebuilt. I can tear this tranny down and look and identify just the sealing rings and stuff that's been used in this unit, and knowing that it's been into once before just by the color and the style of rings that this got in it right now. What we do is we look for wear here. If you can see it, we have a suction side of the filter, and then we have a pressure side of the pump. So if we get a lot of wear in here, our pump will be really terrible. So you really want to look there for wear. This is what we call a vane pump. The spring like this, compared to a when we rebuild these pumps, all this stuff in the center here gets replaced. I haven't really seen one that we tear down that ain't just totally wore out. There's always wear on this surface here really bad. Look down through here, make sure you don't have no wear here. You want to look at this pin that sets down in here. There's a little floater spring that keeps it floating. You want to look for wear. This one here is wore out really bad. Let me get a little. You can kind of see it right there. See that wear? That pin's wore out, and it lets this rock back and forth and not keep that steady in there under high pressure. So all that stuff there will get changed. You want to click this band anchor off right here with a screwdriver and get that out of there like that. It's a little metal piece that's up right here. When you do that, you can just pull this out at one piece. If you don't, you kind of fight it. It's hard to get it out. With this one here, I just pulled it out just like that, real nice. You got your 2-4 band. Now here's that little anchor I was talking about. You want to try to get that out of there, kind of push the band over it like that. That way you can just pull this drum and stuff out. If you don't, it'll get hung on this lip edge right here, and it's just hard to get it out. So that makes it a lot easier. Now this band is burned up right here. This is called your 2-4 band. The band we use is about this much wider, and it's got a lot more aggressive material on it instead of this paper lining here. This is called your reverse drum, actually. Even though the 2/4 band goes around it like this and comes on it like this, it actually got the reverse clutch deep inside. So they made two versions of this style clutch assembly with the 700 and when they switched to the 4L60. The 4L60E, the 70s and all that stuff stayed the same. And this is the clutch here. You can see it's already burned up a little bit. But what they did is they put what they call is a bevel plate. It's a plate that's already bowed, and when the clutch comes on, it flattens that back and softens that engagement. Well, before they had one of these in there, and it was wavy like that, and when the clutch come on, it has to smash that wave. Well, they went to this design here, and they pretty much stuck with it, like this. So now the 700 had a thicker clutch, and this is a thinner clutch here, but the thickness of the steels and stuff did stay the same. Now, let me tell you something here, what they did on this tranny here. The 700 had a big hole right here in this drum to apply the reverse clutch, and then in the pump right here, they put a big hole here. Okay? Well, on the 4L60Es and the 70s and stuff like that, this hole right here is really big, and this hole right here is small. So if you take and put a big hole drum here with a big hole drum hole here, you're going to get a harsh engagement in reverse. So this is a real critical area that you want to look at, because the 60s are the ones that they put these small hole drums in. Let me kind of wipe this off and you see that hole down in there. Can you see how tiny that hole is? And you see how big this hole here is. See, that's how they restricted the fluid going to this clutch right here. So if you have to replace it, you want to really watch for something like that. Now, your forward clutch, your engine brake clutch, and your 3/4 clutches in this drum right here, you can see the seals right here that keep the fluid apart, like that. You come in here, take this air blower and blow in that, and make these clutches work. When we rebuild them back, we air check all these circuits like this. See that moving there? You can barely see it move. That's the forward clutch. Now this tranny, the 3/4 clutch is burned out of it right here. You'll be able to see that come up. See that like that? This clutch is burned up. See all the clearance in this clutch pack right here? It's just totally burned up. Okay? Now, I'm going to get to something on this drum right here that we've talked about before. This tranny's been built before, and this load springs that they took out of this drum right here, they should have never left out. I went on another video and I talked about timing issues this tranny has. Now, I'll go back in here one more time and give you an idea of what we got here. What we got is what we call a load spring right here. This spring goes down in this drum and sets in here like this. And what it does is it slows this clutch from coming on. And why they do that is because this band has got to come off. So when you're going down the road, it shifts a second, you got this band that comes on like this. Now, to shift a third, this band has to come off. Well, this clutch comes on so fast that it don't give this band enough time to come off. So what they did is they went in here and put these springs right here to slow this clutch from coming on, where it has to compress these springs. So if you leave these springs out, you just caused a major issue, and this is what happens. Because this tranny was rebuilt before, and they left these load springs out, and it takes out the 3/4 clutch. Well, when we go back in here, we put a 14 clutch back in here, and we go with a real wide band. So if you leave these out in that instance, you'll have a bigger issue, because now when we put our big race band in here, there's more surface on this band area to release. So you got to give this band even a little bit more time to come off because this clutch comes on so fast. So if you leave these out with my 14 clutch third gear in there, it's going to be really bad. I mean, even how bad I build this tranny, the 3/4 clutch is going to fail if you leave these springs out. So you always want to make sure they're good and long, sticking over the edge. If they're down here flat and flush right down in here, they're junk. You need to make sure that they're really tall, that they're going to be working, okay? So that's a big issue on rebuilding these trannies. These guys go in there and do that. What you should have done was left the load springs in and come in here and drilled that hole right there. If you'd have drilled that hole right there and left these load springs in, the third gear shift would have been superior. I mean, it would have been night and day how that tranny would have worked. But since you didn't, then you caused your own problem. So now this here is the forward clutch and your engine brake clutch, okay? Now when they built this tranny here, what they did is they added a wave right here. No, excuse me, didn't add it, they've always had it, but they put a steel against a wave instead of a clutch, and they made these clutches thinner. They left the steels the same thickness, but on the 700, the clutch went against a wave like that. See? Well, on a 4L60, to soften it up and make it better, they put the wave and then put a steel and then a clutch all the way to the top of the top half. And the engine brake clutch hasn't changed today. They still use the same clutch, identical steels, all the way up to the 65s. Nothing has changed. Actually, nothing has changed in this setup right here at all. Nothing. Once they went to this, they pretty much stuck with it. So, this is our forward Spragg assembly. It's a one-way bearing, spins to the right, locks to the left. This tranny here, if just saying, it's pretty crazy. If just saying, if this forward clutch burned up right here and you put it in overdrive, the vehicle wouldn't take off. But if you put it in low gear, the vehicle will take off. And why that does that is because these clutches right here come on. These two little clutches come on. And when you take off, you shift it to second gear, it stays on all the way through. So through the shifting of the tranny. But when you come back to the stop, you're back in neutral again. So that tells you what's going on. I'll let you get a look at this Spragg real quick here. Now they did update the Spragg. This isn't the factory GM Spragg here. This is an aftermarket Spragg. This is what they look like. Pin this way, lock this way. They did upgrade this thing. In my other videos I was showing y'all like 3 times. But this is what that looks like. They updated this here to a flat design. They got rid of this hump and made it flat because they did realize this right here was an issue. They thought the Spragg itself was an issue, but it wasn't. It ended up being the backing plate that actually holds it. This is what we call your forward sun gear. This does lock into the Spragg assembly like this. Now, the 4L60Es, 70s and stuff like that, they have 3 little clips right here that actually hold this on there. So when you take the tranny apart, this actually stays on here like this. So it will come off, and it will retrofit back and forth either way. So snap ring holds the forward planet and stuff in. Down in there. That's what your forward planet looks like. You always want to look for wear. See if the washers are in there. Check the bearing. There's a bearing here. They did upgrade this to a bearing style too in the late model 60Es into the 65s. They got rid of this. When they added tow haul to the shifter, they physically put a bearing right here and got rid of this thrust washer right here. So that way the tranny could actually take more load that way. Now this is what the sun gear shell looks like. These are bad about breaking off right here and stripping, which this one is almost stripped out already. But the one we go back in is a hardened unit. It weighs the same, but it's been treated all through here and makes this really extreme. That way it holds up good, because if you put the big old heavy one in there, a lot of people do. I had a customer bring me one in yesterday to look at, and I want to explain something here. This drum spins twice the engine RPM in first gear. And you put this big old beefy shell in here like this. So it's in there, and you get this spun up. So if you're shifting at 6,000 RPM, this drum's turning 12,000 RPM. And this little band's got to stop it from making a shift, when it makes it shift completely. So when you put that beefy shell in here, you got so much more spinning mass that it's really, really hard on the band. So always try to find the light one that's hardened, and you'll be a lot better and easier on the parts. Like that. This here's your lower sun gear. Want to check for wear anywhere on this thing. They do make a wider bushing that you can put in here and get rid of this narrow bushing. It's about an inch wide or 3/4 of an inch wide instead of this little 1/4 inch wide one here. Kind of tap that like that. Just grab the shaft, pull it out the back, because it will not come out because you got these pieces here like that. But then you can push in there and grab your Spragg Assembly. And this is the same thing, but this is called a roller clutch because it's got rollers and springs. But it does the same thing. Spins one way, will not turn back. Spins one, will not turn back. Now, another thing they did change on this, you got to be really careful about it. Okay? What we got here is a wave they added to soften up reverse. They were all worried about shift feel when they built this tranny. So they added the wave, they added the accumulator, and now they added a second wave in the low reverse clutch. So when you're backing up and you put it in reverse, you got this clutch coming on, and you got this clutch coming on right here in that reverse drum. You have a wave here to make it softer, and you have a wave here to make it softer. Okay? But when they put the wave here, to use the same clutch thickness and the steels, they actually went to a thicker right here. So they make physically a thick and a thin right through there. I could go get one to show you, but I got to get really busy. But see the thickness right here? They make one thin and thick. And if you put the thin one in there, you just made this have too much clearance. But if you put the thick one in like in a 4L60E or a 700, you probably just brought these clutches on without even knowing you did it, because you just took up all the clutch clearance with this thicker plate right there. So now here's your rear planet. It's a 4-pinion. You always want to check these for wobble. All of them. And make sure they're not wobbling.
Hey,
this bearing right here
on the phone?
is you want to check for smoothness. Like that. Because this bearing right down in here is a big failure rate too. So you want to check and make sure that that bearing is in really good shape. Check here for any wear on these teeth on both sides of the gear. Any pitting or anything, replace it and look for any pitting on the gear itself. So, pretty amazing tranny when GM designed it to be a soft engagement tranny and stuff, but still using it today in the 65s, the 70s and stuff like that, so a pretty good tranny. So we'll get this built for Brody, and with all the good parts that we supply here at Precision Transmissions, and get it going. But hey, check our webpage out at CreichTransmissions.com. Check us out there and watch some of our videos and stuff like that, and see if you like them. But we'll get this going for Brody again and see how he likes it. Stay tuned.